Welcome to week 19 of Carole Tuesday, the Shinichiro Watanabe show that's sometimes about music and sometimes about people, or sometimes about people and sometimes about music. It's hard to tell sometimes which one it's actually about. And last week we saw kind of the show go back to its strengths, where we had kind of like the A story, B story type stuff. And we didn't really go too far in any one category. Now, before we get started with this week, I really want to just talk about one of the comments that I got last week, just because I think it's so apt about what exactly the show, what exactly is wrong with the show. Even though I do continue watching it week to week, I do find that there's something lacking to some degree with it. And the thing that I think is lacking with it is that it's really not meant to be a week to week show, I don't think. And Netflix recently announced their release date for the first half of Carole Tuesday, and I think it's sometime in the first week of September. So we should be seeing Carole Tuesday make its international debut on Netflix in the coming months. But I think it'll have a lot more positive reception when it goes on there, maybe, because I think they're going to do the first 13 episodes and then they're going to do another 13 episodes later on after, it's finished airing in the next 5 weeks, because we're currently on week 19, Other than that, I don't really have much else to say. We might talk about it more at the end, but I don't really think it's a week-to-week show. That's why it's so difficult to watch week to week. If you watched it all in a row, maybe the character development that we get would be more, more substantial than it is. If you watch 3 episodes and then you see Carole's arc or Tuesday's arc from like being someone who didn't want to talk to the journalist to someone who did talk to the journalist, and then going back to, being more reticent about her mother's role in things, and then eventually falling for the journalist. And then Carole's whole thing about like her dad, she saw him in a laundromat. She said, "I'm going to perform for you," and all that stuff. And that eventually does end up being kind of a mini arc there. But when it's spread out over 4 weeks or whatever it is, it kind of ends up being less impactful maybe. And maybe that's just something that we have to deal with when we're watching anime week to week. So without further ado, let's see week 19 at Carole Tuesday. I had completely forgotten about the whole terrorist subplot. So there's this whole terrorist subplot where, somebody bombed the weather plant, and people think that it might be, or I think that it might be, Tuesday's mom, in order to get more support for her kind of more, like anti-immigrant rhetoric that she has. So now we have snow for the first time, which I think is just a convenient excuse to put Carole Tuesday in winter outfits, which is something we haven't seen them in this whole time. And it also helps, further her mom's plot. So there is that. They're also going to play a set at Cydonia Fest. I didn't realize they were playing a set. I thought they were just playing a song. The significance, of course, being that if you play a set, you get to pick like all the songs that you want to play. Even though their album isn't out yet, they're still going to play a set, I guess. I don't know about that, but wishing them all the best, because we still haven't seen exactly where in their trajectory it's going to be those miraculous 7 minutes that we've been hearing about this whole time. Is it going to be Cydonia Fest? Is it going to be some kind of like political rally? Are they going to pull a like step up to the streets where they just randomly start performing at her mom's rally just because they're in the crowd, to dispel kind of like the fervor and political hatred that's coming up? Is it something like that? That would also be kind of cool to see. Their album hasn't released yet, so we haven't got the numbers back on that. They were 18th in the top 100 rankings last time. Did they make any progress with that? I just want to see all those things, some development of that happen this episode. And of course, I want to hear more about Kyle and how that lady who he was with is not a romantic interest at all, which is obviously going to be pulled this episode. Let's keep going. So just a small comment on the directing again. One of the things that impressed me with the directing of the show at the very beginning was how quickly they would cut between a scene with Angela in it and a scene with Carole Tuesday in it. And it really helps like set the difference between them, because of course everywhere that Carole Tuesday are is extremely analog and like downplayed and very low key and kind of things that we can recognize. And wherever Angela is just some kind of high tech, like utopian AI vision of what the future is going to be. As exemplified by this cut, where we cut from Angela's swanky high-rise apartment, where she has pets and, professional designer, dining tables and whatnot, to the dingy, crusty studio that Toby's recording their album in. And the framing that we get is through this like old, cracked, sepia-tinted window that's just covered with cobwebs. Coincidence? I think not, The juxtaposition is something that has really been kind of emphasized throughout the whole show, and it's not really anything new for me to point out. I just thought that since, we've been picking on the directing of the show lately, we should give it credit when it does something good too. Um, we haven't really heard anything about Tao in a long time, so it's good to hear from him too, in a way. But I can't help but think that he's one of those, like, it's this tried and true narrative of like someone who is really smart but doesn't want to use their intelligence for the things that the establishment wants them to use their intelligence for. You can think back to like characters who made weapons and then regretted making them in the future, or who were forced to do something in like the foolishness of their youth and they regret doing that later in their old age. It seems like Tao is that kind of person who got drawn into something that he probably didn't want to be involved with, and because of that he ended up maybe doing some stuff in his research at IMT that he maybe didn't want to be involved with, and now he regrets that. He's moved on to some like peaceful part of his life where he's doing music stuff, like generally harmless things, and he's being approached by this political consultant guy who obviously wants him to do some like search engine manipulation or something, where he uses AI to mess with people's opinions of things to win the vote for Valerie Simmons. We finally see these two worlds clash, like the music and political world. They've generally remained completely separate until this very moment. We know that eventually they are going to clash at the end of the day, so it's good to see that the seeds for that are being sown here. Tao is kind of like this enigmatic character who just drifts through things and is like infinitely competent in anything he sets his mind to. So I really want to see some more character development with him. There's a lot of characters that I want to see that with. Like, we still haven't explored Angela's like guardian figure all that much. Carole Tuesday we know a fair deal about. Gus we know a little bit about. Roddy basically nothing. Like, for someone who is part of the like main four cast of the whole show, you'd think that they would have more to say about Roddy, but it seems like he's just kind of like wallpaper, and he just serves this plot purpose of someone who knows Erdogan and has connections in the music industry, similarly to like Gus's ex-wife, who we saw for literally one episode and then never again. I just wish they spent more time developing these characters instead of trying to make like some pseudo like social commentary, because they've toyed with this stalker narrative like twice now, and both times it hasn't been very effective at all. The Black Knight arc has been totally just completely useless. They're trying to like put this Black Mirror fear of technology into you, but it's so vanilla and plain that it really doesn't hit any kind of chord with me at all. Oh, he was watching her through the camera and her AI bunny, like that's not even creepy. Like, you would assume that's the easiest thing to go for. If he was like watching her through the fridge or something that you wouldn't even expect, like what if he was watching her from the exhaust fan in her like kitchen stove or something completely unexpected? I feel like they missed an opportunity there to do something more intrusive than just basically what amounts to like if you've heard of that new Chucky movie where Chucky's an AI doll, he basically just hacked the Carole Tuesday version of that, and that's really not all that creepy to me. Like, people have been putting tape over their webcams and their laptops for years and years now. It's not exactly the most creepy thing to hack a walking dog. The Black Knight character we've had no development with at all. We've already eliminated any twist that it could be, which might be like minorly interesting. If someone had a different public persona than they did in private, then you could talk about like why they repressed that part of themselves, or like why they felt inadequate enough to do that. Like, you could explore those character developments, but that guy has already been eliminated as Black Knight. He hasn't really done anything super creepy. Like, there are worse stories than this in real life, and if you want to do something about the technological effects that it can have him do something that's like extremely creepy. But if you're not willing to go there, then why even approach the topic at all? It just seems kind of thrown in as like a leftover reheated Black Mirror, like leftover nightmare from when they saw one season of Black Mirror. It really didn't strike a chord with me at all. Okay, let's keep going. I'm not too familiar with new age rappers, but I'm pretty sure that's Uzi, I think, Lil Uzi Vert. It might be someone else. I'm horrible at this, so just tell me that I'm wrong and put the name of the real rapper in the comments down below. But clearly, that's some like new age rapper they're referencing. Just to comment on this a little bit, this is like one of those, like, this is super famous, like Coachella in particular is super famous for having secret guests come out during other people's sets. I know rappers bring out like every single person that's ever been featured on one of their songs. Just, they won't be listed on the set list at all, and they'll just show up and perform. It's kind of like a bonus that you end up paying for, but that you kind of expect to happen. They're commenting on that a little bit. Also, I thought it was funny to note that even though Angela's like super wealthy and well off, she does travel everywhere in a mint cab, which I think is their way of commenting on like the Uber phenomena, where people don't even own cars anymore. They just go everywhere in rideshare apps. I just thought that was kind of interesting. Also, this whole festival is basically Coachella. Just wanted to say that. It looks like Burning Man, but it's actually Coachella. It's him. We know it's him. He's gonna put on an evil smile in a second. Yikes. Yo, I don't know if this is totally not intended. It's just a straight up like coincidence, but Mindhunter season 2 has a plot point like this but they're the ones who are one step ahead of this. So where this show treats him being part of security as like a twist, in Mindhunter season 2, very, very mild spoilers, not really anything significant. In Mindhunter season 2, they know that the killer will want to be part of the security of an event. So they like set it up to try to get the killer to sign up so that they can know who he is, at least have his paperwork down. I just thought it was funny that show is like 2 steps ahead of where this show is. Not to say that that's bad or anything. That's just something interesting that I thought. So wait a second. You're telling me you were teasing this for 5 episodes so he could get zapped by Tao before she performs? And that was the whole point of this whole arc, this whole Black Knight, like threatening. He ran over a dude with a car and he just got zapped. That was it. That was the whole lead up. That's the most anticlimactic thing I've ever seen. Unless he blows up everyone at this festival, I'm going to be severely disappointed by this build up for no reason. If they gave the song to Katy Perry, I'm pretty sure it would be Billboard #1, or whoever is like the hot female artist of the day, for sure. If they gave this, maybe Taylor Swift is into EDM now. I don't know. She started off as like a country singer. Who knows what she's doing now? She seems to be getting more and more edgy by the day. Maybe if they gave this to whoever that is, it'd be a #1 hit. I think the song's pretty lit, actually. Not going to complain at all. So that was episode 19 of Carole Tuesday, and what a weird episode. It's really felt like this one had no focus whatsoever. I know they were trying to focus it on the Cydonia Fest, but even then, it didn't really focus on the Cydonia Fest. Like, for me, the songs in this show kind of serve the purpose of like a fight scene in an action show. So you've seen many videos about this, but in every video that talks about like how fight scenes can be done well, they always talk about how for a fight scene to be really meaningful, it has to carry some kind of like story connotation. Like there has to be some fight that the main character is trying to overcome. There have been good examples of this with Carole Tuesday in the past. Like they've done several performances where they were trying to overcome certain odds. In particular, the one where Tuesday was about to be like blown up and they had to like, she went missing or whatever, and they had to find her. They were late for the, and finale of the talent show. That was there were stakes to that performance. There were some other performances where they like really had to show up, like at that time when they performed at the bar, where like you really had to show up in order to look good in front of Gus's wife or whatever. And it kind of lost its way at some point. Like this Cydonia Fest was supposed to be some kind of like big performance that they put on, but the whole episode we spent following Angela and Tao. And their whole development in this episode was completely anticlimactic. He just ended up getting zapped. I already said this before. He just ended up getting zapped by some microwaves, Mr. Black Knight, and he just fell down, and that was all we heard from him. I assume he got arrested. They didn't show that. The performance really didn't carry any like story beats. We just saw the performance happen with cuts to static, reaction shots, which if you remember, was what we got during the talent show arc pretty much exclusively 4 times an episode, was music with some, what a commenter called random rotoscopy. I think that's a good way to put it, because the rotoscopy really doesn't serve any like emotional purpose other than to just have a technical kind of flash. For example, Angela is supposed to be like this all-powerful, like very entertaining diva type person, but her performance was kind of normal and ordinary. Like if she had really wowed us with like her dance skills and they were able to convey that with the rotoscopy, I felt like that would be a bigger, impact, emotional impact of where her journey came. Like she was unable to even bring herself into a state to perform because she was dealing with the stalker thing, which I never really felt connected with her on at all, even though I like that character a lot, and I felt like she's one of the better characters in this show. It really feels like they missed some beats on that with, letting us relate to her, dealing with the, emotional stress of having a stalker behind you. And she was able to overcome that and perform anyway at the Cydonia Fest, but we didn't really get any emotional payoff from that just because her performance, which everyone else said was extraordinary, really didn't pop off the screen in any noticeable way. They rotoscoped her as they usually do with all the performances, but there was no like flash, there was no like extra pop. This might be a weird reference to make, but if you've ever seen any of the performances on the show Glee, you know that when they really want to strike a point home, they put in that extra effort. They have like an elaborate dance number, or they have like a very impressive vocal performance. And I don't know if it's because of like a Japanese cultural thing where you're not really supposed to belt, but like if you've ever heard of The Voice or watched Glee, you know that when a character has like an emotional a story in that episode, they generally like belt and hit like some very high notes, and it's impressive, and that's supposed to show you like they've overcome their emotional turmoil to a point where they can perform in a satisfactory way. To me, Angela didn't really do that. She didn't really seem stressed. When she saw that the dude had been zapped, she was just like, okay, Tao, thanks for zapping this dude I've been worried about for months, literal months, who's been harassing me, stalking me, taking pictures of me, just, haranguing me daily. And there's no relief on my face beyond just a simple wave as I go off to the stage. I thought they totally missed the mark on that. Point 2, Carole Tuesday's performance, which came after Erdogan Angela, which makes no sense because Erdogan Angela should be the headliner and they usually go last. And after that, there's usually not many other people. Was it like a cool down set, or like they wouldn't even have been on the main stage if this was the kind of music they were playing? Because you heard the type of music that they were playing. And these people know what they're doing. Like the people who arrange the set list at Coachella don't go from just straight hard banging EDM into like some weirdly relaxed indie pop. That really didn't feel on brand to me with this show, because this show goes out of its way to like try and comment on things that it sees as happening as trends in the current musical industry and / or political climate. So I felt like that missed the mark also completely. If Carole Tuesday had been the intro to Angela Erdogan, that would have been much better in my opinion, because they would have tried to be flashy and they would have gotten outflashed, and then they would realize that, oh, hey, we're not supposed to be flashy, which is kind of the lesson of the show. But in this, they just got outflashed before they could even flash. They made no mistake. They just learned from their mistakes before even making them, which makes for a very shallow character development arc. I feel like we're slipping back into those talent show doldrums where we just get musical performances with static reaction shots. It's kind of like coming back to me like a nightmare of all those 6 episodes where we just got musical performance after musical performance. At least the fest is over now, although I suspect there's going to be some kind of contrived reason to get more musical performances in the future. I really feel like if they had made this Cydonia Fest thing into a 3-episode arc where they really focused on the importance of it and like built it up, and Carole Tuesday were so stressed to the point where they couldn't even breathe. Instead, they kind of just approached it nonchalantly. We kind of got this vague scene about how they put in effort to learn how to toss a baton, which they never ended up having to do anyway. It all felt like they just kind of waltzed into it just because they're vaguely popular, and which to me doesn't make them any different than Angela, who's coming through on her popularity also. And her music she doesn't make, but Carole Tuesday make their own music, but they're also not being promoted based on the strength of their music. They're being promoted because they're vaguely successful from having won the same competition. So is this show trying to market like a feel-good vibe of the music industry, or is it trying to do like a cynical vibe where you think that even the indie artists aren't really, promoted based on their talent, but because they're popular? If it's doing one, it's doing it kind of, backhandedly and kind of sarcastically and not wholeheartedly rather. If it's doing the other, it's not doing a very good job of it. I don't really know what to think about this show anymore. 5 episodes to go. That's 5 weeks. So we're going to be done with this by the first week of October, probably. Or is it 7 weeks? Because I think might be 26 episodes. So mid-October is when we're going to be done with this. And I've been watching this for almost half a year now. So it's going to be 6 months by the mid of October. And I feel like the show has gone quite a long way downhill since we first started. And I was optimistic about kind of it being like Space Dandy with music. Obviously, it's not that. Not even close to that. This might be a good opportunity to just talk about Netflix original anime in general, just because I happen to have Netflix. I've been watching a lot of Netflix original anime, but I rarely ever make it past the first episode because they're usually very horribly executed. Sometimes their, premises are too generic. Sometimes just their animation is way too janky. And I don't know if it's because Netflix has a very low production budget or if they just institute a very quick turnaround time or what it is, but there's something inherently low quality about a lot of Netflix animation. Now there are exceptions to this. The Beginning had pretty good animation even though the story and everything else was horrible. There was this show called Hero Mask, which wasn't horrible art-wise. It was acceptable, but the story was complete trash and the writing was actual horrible. Like, it was really bad. I only made it 3 episodes in before I dropped it. Some of them just have mind-boggling art style choices. Like, there are a lot of 3D animated shows. I get that Knights of Cydonia was good Netflix. I get it. But you don't have to make every show 3D animated just because you want it to be an action show. You can actually do action shows in 2D. Case in point, there's a show called Kengen Ashura, which came out recently. I watched the first 4 episodes of that this morning when I was sleepless. It's like weirdly incongruent and kind of bad. And even though they're using 3D models, they still have the frame rate be really choppy so that it looks like 2D animation, which I think kind of defeats the point in the first place. Like, if you're going to do an action show with 3D models, you might as well exploit it and make it look really smooth and kind of like slow motion animated. But it ended up just looking kind of choppy, except for when they slowed it down, and even then it looked really bad. If you haven't seen that show, if you've heard of Baki the Grappler on Netflix, the art style is similar. I wouldn't recommend either one, to be honest. Netflix anime in general just seems to be in a weird place. I don't know why anyone would watch or anyone would go to Netflix specifically for anime, except for the ones that they acquired from other places. Notably, Kakegurui, One Punch Man Season 1. I don't know if they have Mob Psycho, but if they have that, there's that. Then there's a bunch of older shows. They had the first 36 episodes of Hunter x Hunter. I don't know why they don't have the whole thing. It seems like that would be a really easy one to recommend because Hunter x Hunter just slots right in after you watch pretty much any anime. You can go to Hunter x Hunter. Mind-boggling decisions that Netflix is making as to what these shows have turned out to be, and it kind of strikes me like they're approaching this animation the same way they're approaching their kind of rom-coms, where they just throw money at people to make stuff, and they're like, we need it by this time, and they just come up with this 90-minute movie that's just complete trash and not worth watching at all. But I guess that's what we have to accept in this day and age, is that Netflix is just gonna have some studios make anime for them, and the studios have no choice but to say yes, because that's just the way that the anime industry works these days. You take money wherever you can get it. So I guess thanks Netflix for getting Shinichiro Watanabe out of, semi-retirement. Was it worth it? To me, not really, unless they can do something that turns it around in the next 5 episodes. I don't know what that thing is going to be. We'll see, I guess, when we get there, but my enthusiasm is at an all-time low for this show, especially because after episode 14, I thought we were kind of on the way back up again with this show, because they were bringing in the political intrigue, they were bringing in journalism, search engine manipulation, but we've kind of settled back into old habits. I don't know why that's the case. Is it because the first couple episodes of each season are the only ones that matter, because those are the only ones that people are going to watch, consciously before they fall asleep, and just let the rest of the season run by? And now I'm getting too cynical, so probably this is a good place for me to stop with I wouldn't even say analysis. I would say I'm shredding the show like pulled pork at this point. So I'll just leave it alone. We'll come back to it next week. The big 2-0, episode 20 next week. Stay tuned. Tell me if I'm being overly negative, which I assure you I probably am. That's Carole Tuesday, episode 19. Tell me what you thought of the episode. Like, comment, subscribe, all that good stuff. And I'll see you in the next episode.